On the day of Hoodoo Girl's 14th birthday, her mother went to the nearest Auto Faith police station, located in Kilburn High Road, and filed a complaint against her daughter on the grounds of vagrancy and heresy. Most damning of all, she denounced her as a reader, which was the gravest accusation that could be raised against anyone in New Britain. Reading had become a criminal offense among the youth after the reenactment of the laws of treason of the Tudor era. In the wake of the fall of the world's economy, sometime after the great pandemic and war. In accordance with such laws, to wish for or imagine the death of the king, the demise of the financial heart of the globe in the city of London, or the fall of the church, and to host a migrant thought would be tantamount to committing high treason, since only a step separates will and imagining from action. Hell is other people. Jean-Paul Sartre, No Exit, 1996. Fully flexible philosophical action figure, collector's item. Authorized use by the name by the Wayland Incorporated French Republic. 10% of the profits will go to support the resistance fighting against the new Reich in the Southern Front. Do your part. Down with retro-fascist capitalism. Down with retro-fascist capitalism. Action figures of radical philosophers were the latest retro craze to come out of France. The huge billboard advert was visible from the porthole of the fiberglass submersible approaching the port of Calais. They came in human-sized boxes wrapped in transparent paper, fully robotized, capable of delivering wise philosophers out of the most complete databases of the history of ideas available at the push of a button. Is other people. On voice command, they could answer complex existential or metaphysical questions and provide self-help advice. You could also download their apps into your implanted smartphone, wisdom for a few pound credits. All action rad philosophers were, in all aspects of detail, fully human. They were perfect seventh-generation androids, tall, mobile, conversant, emotional. You had never seen them with your own eyes until the day when you and your sister won a shopping expedition to ex-London Central in a wireless TV program. You stopped in front of the windows as Selfridges a few days before 3 Christmases, and there they were. Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, and Friedrich Nietzsche, in retro hipster gear at the center of the Windows holiday arrangement. Each figure had a soundbite, depicted as one of those bubble-like vignettes used in old-fashioned comic books. It read, "Bias were the masters of suspicion." To the left, Anacharsis the Scythian, Ernesto Che Guevara, and your all-time cold favorite, Slavoj Žižek. Caption: Do you think your righteousness will pay back your debt? I doubt it. Support the revolution. You were particularly impressed by the Zizek figure. It looked the piece, disheveled and kempt, its gray t-shirt covered in sweat and Coca-Cola stains. The window was interactive. Your sister pressed the key on the window screen and Slavoj walked towards you. Fixing his blue eyes on yours, the android shouted, "Fuck you!" A spray of sweat and saliva covered the window. It was the coolest thing you had seen in a very long time. "I get him, sis," you said. "I would pay to get told off like that."
Damnation, abolition. Damnation, abolition.
The rules of commerce for the use of books were introduced early in the 21st century. The principle was simple. If only a handful of people buy or rent a book, then it is appropriate to correct such commerce for efficiency reasons. Two kinds of corrections were introduced. They were known as damnation and abolition. By damnation, a book could be rewritten in whole or part, and an author or a book dealer would lose their license to trade or be declared infamous by order of the Council of World Faiths in the Ministry of Constancy. By abolition, any trace of the author, her name, and her work could be erased from the records or withdrawn from the shelves of libraries if any such books remained and the trade forbidden. These measures were carried out by the civil servants of that ministry, the ministry, working together with the council's censors. The latter became better known as firemen or inquisitors, and their enforcement arm as the faith police. Initially, the task, such as what was to correct common errors detected in a published text, such as a perceived lack of coherence and constancy of belief in the main tenets of this or that faith, whose church collaborated with the government in the provision of public services. But when the council became the main provider of education services in the country, a renewed effort to make reading lists and syllabuses constant and consistent with the pillars of morality gained ground. Evolution was taught side by side with intelligent design, and the text of Charles Darwin and Sia Ki-wan were subtly sidelined in favor of more impartial accounts. From correcting partial errors in books, auto-faith policemen moved onto withdrawing and actively pursuing certain titles and authors deemed infamous or undeserving of attention and memory. Successive conservative governments, and there had been none other since the beginning of the 21st century, brought forward a number of acts of parliament that separated children's bookshops from adult bookshops and created a licensing system for publishing houses, universities, newsprints, and internet users and providers. Literature promoting atheism or agnosticism was discouraged, particularly if it was found to be associated with leftism or revolt. The first public book burnings took place in England, the state of Arizona in the American South, and in Chile and Colombia, more or less at the same time. It is not known whether they were ordered or spontaneous. Slowly but surely, under political pressure by the council, the ritualistic burning of books caught on. Because of budgetary concerns, however, all public libraries disappeared. Only some private collections remained in Oxford and Cambridge, subject to strict rules of licensing. Reading became superfluous after the onset of smart implant technologies. how to remind the giant whose foot is crushing your neck that the universe has evolved no terms for your existence. Not yet. And if you despair at the lack of human love, God's love alone is left. But God, as Brother Fire says, is white, and he has left. What then? Fail. Fail again, as Brother Waiting says.
The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised.
A base-soaked overlay reverb saturates the line of succession and temporal orientation towards an apocalyptic end. It opens an interval in time-space. The lowest rhythmic interval becoming music or wave, an axion mass scale wave, it acts sometimes as if made of billiard ball parts and other times sloshing like watery waves. Waves coming together in rhythmic overlay. The revolution will not be televised, he said, but our protest will be sampled. A base-soaked overlay, a base-soaked overlay that reverb saturates black matter, opening la frontera border en el fin, a void vortex, an open wound, heridas abiertas, con venas abiertas, y voices and void vortices, vorágine verde, whirlpools of water, everything comes from there, to which everything returns, for there is no loss, no beginning, no end, but base, suspense, base-soaked overlay.
The revolution will not be televised.
Consider this image. US headquarter companies bought the rights to water in other countries south of the border. These companies are strangers to the gods of those waters, were not formed from them, have never said gracias to them, to those waters, never prayed to those waters, have never been cleansed by those waters, she said. Is there any chance the gods in there may come back angry? That is why we protest, not the human we are not, but the thirst protests, the hunger protests, the lack of air protests. We know the revolution will not be televised, but the protest will be sampled, cut up, cut in, and overlaid, as in the film Now, rhythmic sound overlays to see, hear, and sense, think, not to contemplate, but to action. Therefore, no wonder and no fear, but word cinemas, dwelling, rambling, wandering, we trans-move, looking forwards, moving backwards, we dance-walk, searching in futures past for light of what is to come, but not yet. We walk together in alliance without allegiance, rhythm-wise, but not straight in base-soaked of intervals until we reach the crossroads where the old has died, but hands-on, zombie-like, and the new wants to be born, but not yet. Here the future begins. Back to the heart, back to the womb, back to the matter of futures past, which never stop. If we stop thinking metamerically, we may distinguish diametrically, vertiginously, the light of lighthouses from the lanterns of wreckers wishing to lure us aground, to loot us and slave us. We may not want to know, but we can't shake it off. The feeling that we must break free from these chains, shed this body, for it is not so much that the body is a kind of clothing, but clothing which is a kind of body. It is, as the poet says, take my body and make of it a nation, but one without confession or allegiance, for it assumes the homogeneous body of a nation, An American way of forgetting natives. Discover them with city, crumble them by city, erase them into cities named for their bones until you are the new natives of their new cities. But who lies beneath these streets, these universities, these art museums, she asks. Let's cross the border in the opposite direction. Go south. At sea to sea, really see here, a rhythmic overlay, a bass-soaked relay that reverbs, saturates without delay, for we can no longer wait. Thank you.